You made a move and bolstered your quarterback room, but is it enough for the Carolina Panthers? Today, it's Front Office Friday. We're going to dig into that franchise right now on Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I am your host, former NFL and NFL defensive back, Eric Crocker, and of course, as always, joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy. He's at Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter. I'm at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. I almost forgot my Twitter name. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day, and excited to continue this Friday theme of Front Office Friday and dive into some of these teams and really kind of give our thoughts on their roster building, their perspective, their head coach, like just where the team is at. And this is a team, as I start to kind of dive into their roster, and I know some of the players there who are there. I've watched them, I scouted them. I've talked to a couple of their coaches there on that team. I don't want to say exactly who, but good roster. I'm looking at it, I'm like, dude, this is not a bad roster. Maybe clean up some things on the front end on the offensive line. Can they get some better quarterback play? Maybe that was what went into trading for Baker Mayfield. Now, they tried to figure this out a year ago. So, trading for Sam Darnold. They gave up a decent amount of draft capital for a quarterback who just did not play well in New York. I, for one, thought maybe he just needs a change of scenery. Well, we've seen the change of scenery. Didn't help as much. Still, offensive line had something to blame there. But couldn't get it right. And then we're like, okay, oh man, they traded up for Matt Corral. They must really like Matt Corral in the third round, right? They must really love Matt Corral, trading up in the third round to get him. But okay, maybe that's the insurance policy for Sam Darnold. If he looks like what he's looked like before, and when coaches start to get in I don't want to say panic, but when coaches start feeling like they're on that hot seat, they start doing certain things. And okay, is this the insurance for Sam Darnold? Not ideal for Matt Rhule. And no, that was not the insurance for Sam Darnold. Turns out Baker Mayfield is, and they traded a late round pick to get Baker Mayfield. So, Ryan, I've been talking a whole lot. I want to know some of your thoughts on just this quarterback situation, and is it enough to really kind of turn the page for the Carolina Panthers? I think that started off fairly well last year until they ran into the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, like you said, you have a base roster that you feel like you need to get better quarterback play from, and you're doing things to align to that. I thought Scott Fitterer has led a good offseason for this franchise. But Baker's the crowning jewel, right? Because as much as they want to call it a competition, and they've been very blatant about that, it's not a competition. Sam Darnold isn't beating Baker Mayfield. It's not going to happen. We don't have any indication for what we saw last year that there's even really an apples-to-apples comparison there. It'd be interesting if Brady was still there, in my opinion, because that might change some of it a little bit. But you have the quarterback that I think you have to start Mayfield. It's not a question. And it's actually a good thing because Mayfield should be pissed off, right? The Browns did not treat him well. We talked about them last week or the week before. He should come out with an edge. He should be the best version of Baker Mayfield in terms of his on-field performance. The question is, how does he get into the culture of the team? How can he affect that culture in a positive way rather than a negative one? And is he ready to just swallow his pride and go out there and play?
How do you feel about Baker Mayfield, right? Because we do feel like this is definitely an upgrade at the quarterback position. What we've seen from these two guys consistently, again, different scenarios. And I always try to add a little bit of context to that. Some quarterbacks walk into a situation that is just better suited for them. He's had some pretty solid coaching. Freddie Kitchens, not the best head coach. He was supposed to be this offensive guy. It didn't work out, but they did trade for Stefanski. He was a good coach. Still didn't work out, but we still seen a better version of Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, than we have Sam Darnold. And everybody can say, well, the coaching issues in New York wasn't set up for success, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I think after a few years, two guys that were drafted in the same draft, just a couple of picks apart, I think we know who they are. So I definitely would take Baker Mayfield over Sam Darnold. But how much more do you believe in him to really be a guy that takes this team to the next level, as he kind of did with the Cleveland Browns, a team that had a really long playoff drought?
Mm-hmm. I think it's all about Baker making the decision to be a professional quarterback. I think we had maturity concerns coming out. We heard in the last few weeks that he still has some maturity issues in Cleveland, right? So this is your big reset. This is your opportunity. If you're Baker Mayfield or his representation, you have to take this by the horns and make the most of it, in that this is the end of your career. You blow this and you don't perform well, you're not going to get a primetime top 20 quarterback contract next time. You're not going to have a soft place to land where they want you enough to go trade for you. It's going to be a question of, well, can he really help us? Do we want to bring him onto this roster? It's going to be a lot of more questions than there are answers for Baker Mayfield. So he's got to put it all aside, in my opinion, get mature and be like, this is your job, this is your life, this is your business, at least for one season, to get back on track.
So I think we know what this means for Sam Darnold. It might be almost the end. And we've seen some guys go to different organizations and kind of find their way. And we'll see if Sam Darnold can eventually go to a third team and find his footing. But right now, it seems like he's more kind of trending towards being just this backup in the NFL. But Matt Corral, what does it mean for him to be able to kind of sit behind and really kind of be the third guy, maybe not even be active on game day, but do you see any kind of potential where he could be the long-term guy? Because Baker Mayfield is coming in. It is a one-year thing. He's really playing on his fifth-year option and kind of took less money to be able to go there and start and be in this situation. But is Matt Corral looking at this like, you know what, let me just kind of sit behind Baker Mayfield, see how he conducts himself, how he's learned from his current situation, learn from his mistakes, and then maybe see how he plays the quarterback in position, which we know Baker Mayfield can play very well at times, and say, you know what, moving forward, maybe I can be the long-term guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's maturity questions about Matt Corral coming out too, right? This is the perfect example to see this is what happens when you don't make it work in your first spot. I think this is actually going to be really good for Matt Corral because he doesn't have to have the pressure of, if it wasn't for Baker, then Darnold's going to be your starter, and you're looking at, if I have to pull the plug, I got to bring in the rookie. And I think that's a bit of pressure for a guy that still, I'm not convinced that he's given up the aspect of looking for content and putting himself in bad positions. He's got to mature in some other ways on the field. And I think that part will give him that breathing room. So maybe it buys them a year of development for Matt Corral. And I really like the idea of him sitting behind two veterans that have done it to obviously different varying degrees of success. But it may be more about learning what not to do than it is what to do. But either way, it will help Matt Corral.
A lot of help for Matt Corral. We'll see if this is the right help for one coach, Matt Rhule. All right. So coming up, we're going to talk about the coaching situation. Is he there for the long term? Is he on the hot seat? What's going on there? But first, we want to talk to you a little bit about our good folks over at Built Bar. And from the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built Bar have given you the coconut brownie chunk puffs. Yes, I'm a big puff guy. You know, Ryan's not as much of a puff guy, but I love them. I swear by them. My family does as well. My daughter, we just got a package in the mail with some amazing flavors from Built Bar, and my daughter's already just going in there and stealing some of my healthy snacks. All right, you can stop drilling right now because they are good for you. They are low in calorie, low in sugar, high in protein, and very delicious. Coconut brownie chunk puffs are they're only here for a limited time. And if you want to act on this limited time offer, you need to go to built.com right now and make sure that you don't miss out. They're going to go fast because they taste amazing. And all Built Bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently, and it provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes really good and is actually good for you. The best part about Built Bar Puffs is, of course, they are amazing with the taste, but you'll also enjoy this guilt-free snack because they are actually good for you. They are the perfect treat. They are perfect for when you are craving something and you need something satisfying your sweet tooth. And for some reason, they don't have a ton of sugar in it, but it tastes so good. And if you need a healthy snack, they are an excellent source of protein. Delicious coconut, rich, sweet, brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing right now and get over to Built.com to order your box of coconut brownie chunk Built Bar Puffs right now. Go to Built.com right now and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off of your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, guys, which NFL stars moved the betting line the most? On Monday, they started, the top 50 most valuable players with the odds makers at BetOnline. All right, we've gotten through 10 names right now. So if you haven't listened, go to Locked On NFL on wherever you listen to your podcast and find every episode, including YouTube as well. All right, guys, want to thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And we're continuing to talk about the Carolina Panthers. And now we're on to Matt Rhule, a head coach who has started, 10-23. This is after having some solid success at the collegiate level, most notably really excelling at Baylor. He did coach at Temple, and he was a good recruiter there and factored in the running backs and all that good stuff. But his stint in the NFL hasn't started off well, especially for a coach who was a hot name coming out of college. Tepper and those guys paid him a ton of money, right? And it was like, okay, this is the offensive genius, the guru. Everybody's leaning towards these type of offensive-minded head coaches. Can you hit the ground running? So far, it hasn't gone that way. And I want to ask you, for a team that brought in Joe Brady, and I know myself, I might be guilty of this. I'm like, oh, Joe Brady's going to be there for a year. He's going to kill it. Okay, Sam Darnold's going to take the next step. Joe Brady's going to end up being a head coach somewhere. That has not been the case. Matter of fact, Joe Brady was fired midway through, what was that, year 2, I believe it was? Just fired. Let go. No more Joe Brady. And Matt Rhule is kind of scrambling to try to figure things out on the fly. So do you believe he's on a hot seat? And do you believe that he can kind of coach his way off of that?
Oh, yeah. They planted a metal chair right over a campfire. It's hot under there. Yeah. Like it is going to continue that way. But I will say this. He got with leadership in the front office, and he and Scott Fitterer came up with a plan. I think they did themselves a great deal of service by boiling it down to basics. And this was before even the Baker thing. You went and you upgraded the offensive line, which will help McCaffrey stay healthy, which will help the quarterback play, which will allow you to do more of the things that you want to do on offense that maybe you couldn't evolve to that point because you couldn't consistently execute plays. I think particularly in the way that they drafted Icky, I'm really happy with them. And I think it's going to be incredible. It's going to pay off in spades how they can actually change this offense this season.
Yeah, and the offensive line, that's going to be a huge opportunity for them to really improve, because you look at some of the weapons, and we'll get into that on the next segment, but maybe we could dive into the offense now and kind of where it's at. You have weapons all over the place. For an offensive-minded coach coming out of the Big Ten, Baylor, where, I mean, they were scoring points all over the place. He was Big 12 Coach of the Year. So this is a head coach that can't figure it out offensively, and you should be able to. And now you kind of have no excuses, right? They got you another quarterback, Baker Mayfield, who can play. Behind him, you just need Christian McCaffrey to stay healthy, and that's been a big question. But if he can stay healthy, he's one of the top 5 backs in the NFL with his ability to run between the tackles, outside the tackle box, pass catch, and he's caught a ton of passes out of the backfield as well. And then you look at the receivers that they have there. DJ Moore, who's probably one of the more underrated receivers in all of the NFL. Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, who I really like coming out of LSU. You have a solid tight end and Tommy Tremble. So there are definitely weapons there, but can you be good on the offensive line? And you talked about Ekwonu. He's one of the first pieces to kind of get going in that way. They can get some stability there. Do you think that this offense can really take the next step?
I think that it can. With solidifying the offensive line, and obviously with Brady Christensen there as well, another young player, like that left side you hope can be more stable. We'll see if that actually happens. But the two guys that I think are really going to help, when you look about how Baker started and what can he do best, it is, in my opinion, being able to take what the defense gives him. He doesn't have to push the ball downfield. Moore will provide him, Robbie Anderson as well, some options there, but he doesn't have to do it. I look for guys like Terrace Marshall and Tommy Tremble to be the guys that he actually can target repeatedly and get good yardage out of. I love Tremble and his upside. I think this could be a really nice pairing for a quarterback that needs to be able to get the ball out on time and needs not to put himself in any more danger. He has had some injuries. So as that offensive line comes together and gels, I think you do want to concentrate on the tempo of the offense, getting the ball out. And I think the inside receivers, and obviously Tommy Tremble is going to be a great outlet. You can take a little bit of load off Christian McCaffrey that way. Let's not put him in any targeted danger zones there with those safeties creeping around.
All right. A lot banking on this offense to take that next step. But next up, we're going to talk about the defense and then maybe give our predictions on the outlook of the Carolina Panthers and how this season might turn out for them. But first, we're going to talk to you about our good friends over at BetOnline.net and how this is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and information. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. All right, BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head over right now to the website today to use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action going on at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, this defense. Now, this is really kind of what excites me because you see the firepower that they have on the offense. And Baker Mayfield is solid, right? Just what we've seen outside of the weird video that Odell Beckham's dad put out. So outside of that video, we've seen a solid version of Baker Mayfield. So if we can get that with these type of weapons, the offense should be solid. But this defense, I think that they have big time potential. When you're talking about front office moves and some of the things that they've done, look at these. Brian Burns, terrific, being able to get him in the middle of the first round in 2019. Derek Brown, him being a high draft pick. Gross Matos, really Shaq Thompson really manning that middle since our guy Luke Kuechly retired. All right, Corey Littleton, I like it. I was a little surprised that they brought back Dante Jackson. He was a guy who a little up and down, but I think he played very well. But I was just more surprised because of some of the other corners they had, right? Bringing back Dante Johnson, so you don't really get to see C.J. Henderson be that guy. Keith Taylor, he was a guy who came on pretty strong. I thought he played well as a rookie, considering especially with where he was drafted. Obviously, they have J.C. Horn and Jeremy Chin, so I feel like this is one of the more complete defenses across the NFL. But do you see them really taking that next step and really complementing whatever we get from the offense to where it could result in potentially a playoff push for this NFC South team?
I mean, it all depends on what the rest of the division does. I think they can improve. They were a 5-win team last year. I think they have the defense that can support winning more ball games. Can they be a playoff team? We'll see. It has to come together a little bit because there are some injury issues there. Like you said, Horn, obviously a big injury. Henderson got a history there that you got to pay attention to. I think Chin missed, one game? He was there pretty solidly. I love the secondary and what its capability is. They have a sleeper at the linebacker level in Brandon Smith that they just drafted that I think can play with Shaq Thompson. Damian Wilson looks like he's going to be a guy in the middle for them. We'll see what happens. The backside with Corey Littleton as a reserve really leaves you some questions. Can they come together enough at the second level to really be a stalwart? I think they have the possibility. And I think Brian Burns could break out. He could be the next monster edge rusher this season because he's got to. There's young guys in Matos and Amari Barno is another guy that they just drafted that comes off screaming. There's a lot of speed in the rush, but can they convert to power enough? I like Brian Burns in this season outlook for him. I'm really intrigued by it.
Well, you talked about the second level, and there's a certain rookie that you really like there at the linebacker position. You want to talk about him a little bit?
When it comes to the second level, that's really where I like to go look when you start out. And, Brandon Smith is a guy that can come in and do a number of things for you. I thought he was really raw. My evaluation was very, hey, he's got to develop. He needs leadership, right? But Shaq Thompson, who else are you going to learn from that's better? If it's not Luke Kuechly there anymore, which we're sad to say is not, Shaq Thompson is a guy that came in as a safety out of UW and has been able to make that transition. He plays a little bit of everything. And I think that that's a really nice fit. Damian Wilson's been on a championship team with the 2019 Kansas City Chiefs. He's got something to offer as well. It's a good room for him to come up in. And so I think that could bring in some of that. I'm just not sure what they're going to do with Sam. Right now, I don't know if Corey Littleton's ready to go. I know there's some questions there. I don't have the inside move, but I think that this is a nice group that can gel together. And I think that will be like a nice little pad for Brandon Smith to grow into. And I think he can make some hay that maybe we thought he'd go in day 2. He ended up going to round 4, right? Like maybe he can make up for some of that.
We talked a little bit about Brian Burns, and this guy right now, if you are interested in BetOnline odds, they have him at plus 4,000 to win Defensive Player of the Year. Now, Brian Burns is a guy who, I mean, when he was coming out in 2019, that was one of the guys where I'm like, man, this guy's electric. When you talk about just pass rush moves, fluidity, his ability to really put offensive linemen in the spin cycle. I remember one play specifically, I'll just never forget, where he was kind of the guy on the end, and it was a read option with the quarterback, and he was responsible for really kind of containing the quarterback just in case he pulls. Mm-hmm. Well, he took away not just the quarterback, but the running back as well. That's rare, right? You see a guy who takes away the running back, the quarterback pulls, and then he pulls him down for like a 2-yard loss. So this is a guy with tremendous upside. Do you see him taking that next step? You talked about that. Is this a guy that could potentially, win some people some money with these BetOnline odds of plus 4,000 to win defensive MVP? Maybe, people don't see it coming right now, but do you think he has that capability in him?
I think he does. It's about whether he can unleash it and whether there's enough attention to go around on the rest of the defensive front. You named some guys. Matt Ioannidis has been here a while. Derek Brown obviously has to be dealt with. The question for me is, do they get into like a speed rush oriented thing where they're going with the lighter package with Barno and Matos, who I know has put on a little bit weight, but I thought he was really on the skinny side coming out. So like you have to attack with speed. And does the second level lock it down enough that you can get there, that you aren't getting those instant, drag routes and pivots that they're just dumping out 7-yard passes to and moving the chains. So I think they do have to play together. But if it does come together, I think he's a guy that you can move around and make him a special weapon, and he can get to that next level and be in the discussion of player of the year on the defensive side, a guy that could stand up for this entire franchise. Yeah,
definitely a team that has some big-time upside and is going to start up front there on the defense with guys like Brian Burns. They're going to need their star-studded players to really come into their own this year. Back-to-back seasons with 9 sacks for Brian Burns. Can he take that next step and start to be mentioned with some of the other guys from his class, like Nick Bosa, right, who I get to watch with the 49ers right now? But that's going to do it for this episode of Front Office Friday, diving into the Carolina Panthers. Real quick, do you have like a record prediction for them?
I think they get to 7 wins. They might break to 8. I think getting over 500 is going to be a challenge, but I do think that we see progress this year.
And then one more question. If they don't get over 500, do you see Matt Rhule coaching in 2023?
Eric Bieniemy, welcome to Carolina. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right, Eric Bieniemy finally lands a job there in Carolina. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, Locked On 49ers with myself and Brian Peacock. And we just had Taylor Pepper on, 49ers long snapper. Interesting show there. So make sure you tune into Locked On 49ers. Also, Locked On Chiefs with my guy, Ryan Tracy. But that's going to do it. We'll see y'all Monday. Peace.